Don't ask me how. Don't ask me how this happened, but as I was lying down with my daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, putting her to sleep, I somehow passed out in her bed, and I have spent the last 35 minutes maybe trying to crawl out from her bed so that I could get back down here. I had this all set up. This was all ready to go. I ran upstairs. It's like, okay, I'm gonna tuck you in, Noah, and then I got to go do my thing. I tuck her in, and I completely and utterly passed the freak out. And now finally I am awake, and it is too late to do the show, but the show must go on because it's November 1st and there are many things to do in as many forthcoming days. So here I am tonight. We've finished the watch. Halloween, 31 Days of Halloween is complete. This one was tough, man, but the count is pretty good. I watched 39 movies. Was it about 39 movies in total, and 36 of them were horror movies. So I'm not going to count the other 3. So we're at the total count was 36 this year. Previous years, I think the last 2 years it was both 31 and 31, and before that it was 62. So we've pushed forward, and hopefully maybe next year we'll go even higher. We have a bunch of movies to cover tonight, so let's just jump right into it. We're not going to wait a second longer. Let's get into this movie watch count. Happy Sam Hain. It's Sam Hain today, so there's that as well. I should probably put this up first. My Lord, I'm like totally exhausted right now. Why would I do that? Why would, as soon as I hit my head hit the pillow, now I can't find my tab. Nothing is turning up Jeff today. That's not good. All right, so for the first watch we have, here we go. All right. Hey, John, how are you? Happy Sam Hain to you. Hi, Biz, how are you? We'll get into everybody's picks in a minute. The Thing from Another World from 1951. It said, this is weird. It says it's directed by Christian Niebe, but I thought it was directed by Howard Hawks. I am utterly confused by this. Wait a minute. Am I losing my mind here? Hold on. I think I am literally losing my mind. Thing from Another World was directed by Howard Hawks. What? Was it produced? I'm losing my mind right now. All right. Let's just take that. The Thing from Another World from 1951. Scientists and the U.S. Air Force officials fend off a bloodthirsty alien organism while investigating a remote Arctic outpost. And here is my review of said movie. Oh boy, Jeff. This was a first-time watch, and I really enjoyed it. It's a testament as well to the power of remakes, as well as their importance in cinema history, to be able to take stories that have already been firmly established and breathe new life into them, exploring new ideas and concepts by building on an already established foundation. That is what John Carpenter ended up doing with his remake to The Thing from Another World. It also further crystallizes the true brilliance of John Carpenter as a visionary to take the weakest elements of the original film and elevate them to a point where the remake surpasses the original. Now, generally, the rule of thumb is that any sort of remake is not going to be as good as the original, but man, there are a handful of films. There's a bunch of films. There are definitely exceptions to the rule. What's up, Matt, John? And of course, we have Amy here. How are you, Amy? Happy Samhain. There are lots of exceptions to the rule. There are, for me, there's really a golden trifecta from the 80s of movies that are remaking 50s movies that are just beyond the gold standard, like the Mount Rushmore. Okay, there's 5 that for me that go on the Mount Rushmore of remakes, and they're all sci-fi horror. Okay, ready? It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978, The Thing from 1982, of course, The Fly from 1986, The Blob from 1988, and Night of the Living Dead from 1990. These 5 remakes, remaking movies from the 50s and one from the 60s, if you include Night of the Living Dead, are the gold standard. They are just bar none. And it's funny how, you have one film that's from 78 and one film that's from 90, but the remainder, they're all in the 80s. There was something in the water in the 80s that really sort of, crystallized for guys like Cronenberg and Carpenter and Chuck Russell, who would also go on to direct The Mask. Chuck Russell directed the Blob remake, which was co-written by Chuck with Frank Darabont. But we'll talk about that in a little bit, because I'm probably going to repeat myself. The point being is that these are movies where the original material, it's not that it's flawed, it's just that it's, there's so much room to explore, and these filmmakers took that material and continued to explore. Like, for instance, to bring it back to The Thing, case in point, the monster alien is so underwhelming. It's underwhelming in this film. At the end, the photographer accidentally tries to reason with the thing, and I think I would too, because it looked like it could be reasoned with. So, I thought that was really kind of like a flaw of this original film, which again, obviously is supposed to, it's kind of dealing with, themes of the Red Menace, right? In the 50s, everybody was afraid of communism, the Red Menace. And, of course, aliens were a great sort of vehicle to explore the fears of otherness, right? And The Thing, I would say, is one of those films. So it's like that otherness really needs to feel like otherness in order to really grasp what the feeling was at the time in the 50s. And when you look at the creature in The Thing, it's just not that otherly. I mean, it's a weird looking creature, but it's like it's like the whoever designed the creature itself, like there was no sense of originality. It's just a dude with weird like lobster claw hands, and he's kind of a plant, and he absorbs blood, and it's not scary. There's no stakes. There's no anything. And, everybody's, mostly afraid of it, except, one guy's like, I think I could reason with it. So it's like, and when I'm seeing him attempt to reason with it, I'm thinking, I too could reason with this thing, I think. And of course they couldn't reason with the thing. But what makes Carpenter's Thing so terrifying is that there is nothing human or reasonable about it, right? Not only does it want to become us, and so it's like, again, when you think about the height of the Cold War, reflecting back, the 50s, there was the Red Menace, but then we're at the height of the Cold War in the 80s, a few decades later. I feel like Carpenter like re-examined that theme and just took it to such another level by creating a creature that's just so it's so incredibly disturbing. It's intelligent, and it's something that is beyond all human comprehension, and yet it wants to be us at the same time in order to survive. And so I really feel like Carpenter, he cracked the code and he improved upon it. The other thing, it's just so otherworldly, and it just it really solidifies the fear and paranoia, you know. Um, and you know, the thing that's missing from the original film is that there isn't as much fear or paranoia. You know, you would imagine that the original would, you know, be banking on fear and paranoia as like a main theme, and that's something that like Carpenter would be kind of like copying out of playbook, but it's really an element I feel that Carpenter introduced into the story. It's not really prevalent. It's not really there in the original film. You know, it's just not present. But there's plenty of it in the remake, and it's just lacking. So those are the two elements that are really lacking in the original thing. The monster doesn't look otherly enough, and there's not enough sort of fear and paranoia. At the end of the day, it's a great watch. It's very interesting to see. I love like, you know, I love some of the 1950s tropes. You know, it's funny. The bass looks a lot like the bass in the thing from the 80s. He has an electric blanket suit. One of the guys, I thought that was pretty interesting. It's kind of funny how they put an electric blanket on the icicled alien and it causes him to thaw out. I thought that was pretty funny. It's definitely worth checking out if you've never seen it before. Listen, that movie served as the inspiration for not only just the thing, but also Alien, so many things. So it is like, it is an important film, but it just, you know, it's proto, man. It laid the groundwork. It opened the door so that other things could walk through. That's how I feel about it. So I gave it 3 stars out of 5. The Thing from Another World, streaming on Tubi TV. And before we move on, let's take a moment to be with our sponsor. We haven't seen very much of this month. Riotstickers.com is the sponsor of the Frumess channel. Can you see that right there? These stickers, they're printed on vinyl, and they have a UV coating which protects them from the sun. So they're waterproof and they're sunproof, and you can't go wrong with Riotstickers.com, who are our sponsors here at the Frumess channel. You got 1,000 stickers for $79. Link is down in the description. You could tell that I am like half asleep right now because I'm just doing a horrible job at plugging our sponsor today. It's just the vocabulary is not there, Jeff. It needs to be, but it's not. But what can you do? What can you do? That's just the way it is. So link is down in the description. Go to riotstickers.com/Frumess. Get 1,000 stickers for $79. A deal you cannot miss out on. Let's play our little promo and we will get right back to the program.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
All right, we are back. Let us continue on with our programming. All right. Let's take a stop at the Slaughterhouse. This is from 2023, directed by Matthew Goodhue, streaming on Hulu. I had heard things about this movie. Did get a limited theatrical release, and I don't even know how to begin to talk about this movie. Let's just read the synopsis first. Don't rush, die slow. Wanting to have a killer year, sorority sister Emily Young realizes that she might just be the best option for her sorority. While beginning her campaign, she finds an adorable sloth that steals her heart and soon realizes she just might steal the hearts and the votes of her sorority sisters. But when the bodies slowly begin to pile up in the Sigma Lambda Theta house, Emily and her sorority sisters realize that the deaths are being caused by their new house mascot, the cuddly sloth named Alpha. Will Emily and her sisters escape the house with their lives, or is the death sloth with 3 razor sharp claws too quick for them? Stop right here. Stop right here. Movies don't need to be made anymore. The ultimate movie has been made, and it's called Slaughterhouse. This thing was a friggin' laugh riot all the way through. So first of all, it's, again, it's like it's a sorority house. Everybody is really into social media. There's a huge social media element present in the film. It's all about getting likes. Everybody's sort of introduced by their, the amount of followers they have on the Instagram like app that's featured in the film. And yeah, man, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. The movie kind of starts off a little serious, or serious enough to think that it's some sort of like When Animals Attack movie. And then it just quickly devolves into the weirdest type of, craziness. The movie absolutely is not even, it's not even winking at you. It's screaming at you to not take it seriously at all, while the actors and the tone of the film remain so incredibly serious. Everybody is playing this movie with the most conviction possible. Everybody really believes in what is happening on the screen, and you have like a sloth that's like a puppet, and it's driving cars and taking pictures with cameras and operating social media and murdering people. And there's like this rivalry between the sorority sisters and they have to vote for each other, and the sisters are getting knocked off. The sloth is pissed because it was taken out of its habitat. It goes so all over the place. But it's a prime example of how tone is so important. Not just we've talked in the past about horror and comedy and how they work together, but like tone is like this third element. And if your tone, depending on how you handle the tone, will determine whether you're dealing with a horror comedy or a comedy horror. Now, what's the difference between a horror comedy and a comedy horror? I don't really know how to verbalize it other than it's horror comedy or it's comedy horror. Like, that's it. Like, horror comedy is something that is primarily horror, and everybody's taking things really seriously, but it's so over the top in being ridiculous that it's funny, and that funniness usually comes through in the violence being so over the top or so ridiculous that it comes off as slapstick. And then the reverse, comedy horror, is where it's a comedy first that pushes its comedy into sort of, scary, horrific kind of way with, what they're choosing to show. I don't know if does that make sense? Does that work? Kind of works. In any case, Slaughterhouse is I hope they make like 1 million of these. I'm ready for more. At the end, we get, one of the girls, she just mysteriously has samurai swords, and then they're guns, and they're shooting the sloth. I mean, they go so crazy. Like I said, a sloth drives a car. Like the sloth turns to the camera and is driving a car, for just no particular reason. It's never explained why this sloth is intelligent or able to do this. It kind of, in a way, the sloth kind of operates by like Bugs Bunny rules. That really, it's like a live action Bugs Bunny sort of thing. And I don't know, man. It just kind of works. It just kind of works. So definitely check out Slaughterhouse. I highly recommend it. They say the name of the title in the movie, and the girl, she turns to her boyfriend. She's like, "That is so inappropriate right now." He's like making a pun that's a joke. It's great. It's great. Slaughterhouse. Check that out. Check it out. Streaming on Hulu. Okay, on to the next one here. Ah, yes. Ah, yes. Here we go. An American Werewolf in London. No, not London, sorry. An American Werewolf in Paris from 1997, directed by Anthony Waller. Things are about to get a little hairy. An American man unwittingly gets involved with werewolves who have developed a serum that'll allow them to transform at will. That is an overly simple description of what is happening in An American Werewolf in Paris. It's not that deep, but that's a little shallow right there. You got Tom Everett Scott, who was, he was such a big name in the 90s, even though he really wasn't in that many movies, but he was really wasn't in that many movies. I mean, he was in That Thing You Do, and he was in American Werewolf in Paris. What else was he in? I'm going to take a look. Oh, he's in La La Land. I mean, he kept working after the 90s, but he's in a bunch of stuff. He's in Boiler Room. That's right. He's in Boiler Room. Mars Needs Moms. He's in a bunch of stuff. I didn't realize he's in the Scream series too, the Scream TV series. But really, I think the big film for him that everybody knows him by is That Thing You Do. He's in Van Wilder, and he's in An American Werewolf in Paris. And this was a big follow-up sequel. The original came out in, I think, 1981. And what I remember about this particularly? I remember Bush. Remember the band Bush? They had a tie-in song, and it was called Mouth, and it was from Razorblade Suitcase, which was the big Bush album. That was Bush's big 90s album that I think it came out in 97, and they had a music video tied in with it for Mouth. The song Mouth is in the movie, and it happens during this, the character, Tom Everett Scott's character, is making out. He's about to have sex with a girl on Jim Morrison's grave before he transforms into a werewolf. And yes, I did say Big Bush. That is true. I did say the words Big Bush. I was thinking about that as I was saying it. Razorblade Suitcase is a great friggin' record, man. You got songs like Swallowed is a great song off of the Big Bush album. Greedy Fly, which is a song people don't talk about enough. That had a really great music video. I remember that getting a lot of airplay. And of course, you had Mouth, which is a great, really, really great song. It's such a fun 90s sequel, man. And, there are plenty of elements that make it feel like it's definitely, it's first and foremost, it's kind of like a 90s teen comedy. And then it's a horror film second, it's one of those examples of, I would say it's more comedy horror than horror comedy. Like the original was a horror comedy where everybody's taking everything really seriously, and it's kind of the reverse. But there are some pretty horrifying moments. A bunch of Americans are trapped in a like party, like a underground, like makeshift rave, and they all get ripped apart by werewolves, and it's pretty gnarly. The werewolves, the CGI does not hold up, man. I was talking about this with Bob Rose the other day. Like, typically, I don't really hold CGI against itself, but this was an example where the CGI, the wolves, if you're gonna have if the werewolf is the primary thing and their CGI and they just don't look good, it just sort of takes out of the movie. And this took me out. I like the design of the werewolves, but the CGI, I remember it back in the day looking a lot more, I don't know, my words today. I can't speak. I literally cannot talk today. I remember the wolves looking a lot better back in the day than they did when I had revisited this film. I don't remember the last time I saw An American Werewolf in Paris, but there are just so many moments where you're like reminded that this film is from the 90s, and one one in particular is where just like they have these random like needle drops of music, like ska, like 90s third wave ska music. And it's just, it's really something else. And just like the things that they do, a woman, she's jumping off the Eiffel Tower because she wants to end it all because she is a werewolf. And Tom Everett Scott saves her because he's, you know, bungee jumping. But then he's like pursuing her. He wants to date her. And it's like, dude, she just tried to unalive herself. Like maybe she's not like, maybe this isn't the best time to be pursuing in a relationship. She's not particularly in a good place right now. Is this really someone who you want to pursue in a romantic kind of way? But not, you know, that doesn't work with 90s sensibilities, that everything's on the up and up in that kind of way. It's also kind of like a fish out of water story again, because you have, you know, here you have your Americans. Here you have your Americans in some foreign place being American. The girl is beautiful, and a lot of gratuitous nudity. I mean, it kind of reminds, you know what's kind of crazy about movies like An American Werewolf in Paris and just 90s movies in general, just like all the gratuitous nudity that was prevalent. Like you just don't really see it anymore. I mean, sure it exists, but it's just not like what it was, man. It's not like every 5 seconds. And you know who surprisingly gets naked a whole bunch himself? I mean, with his boxer still on, is Tom Everett Scott. Like strips down just as much as the female lead, who's always showing her breastises. I forget her name. She's not, I feel like she's not in a ton of stuff. In any case, the plot is interesting. It's like you have a cult of werewolves who basically want to purify the world, and they figured out how to turn into werewolves at any time. And there's like a bit of a convoluted plot with her being cured, and that's it kind of doesn't work. But that's not why you watch a film. And then, you know, Tom Everett Scott and his crony, they turn into action stars along with the girl. They become action stars. All of a sudden they have Glocks and they're running around, kicking down doors and jumping through like, you know, caverns and catacombs and things. And it's like, I don't know. It's pretty funny. And in a weird way, it's kind of like I was really sort of reminded of Hostel a little bit, in the sense that you have like three kids, you know, sort of gallivanting through Europe on some kind of trip, and they get caught up in some kind of horror. I guess really that's where the comparisons end. Maybe it's not like Hostel at all. Hostel is a very mean-spirited movie. I'll save that for another episode. Listen, it's a great sequel, man, and people do not care for it, and it always gets a lot of hate. It's really good. It's a really fun, great sequel. I wish they made more. I wish we had a franchise. I wish we had an American Werewolf in, I don't know, Japan, an American Werewolf in Australia, the marsupials. You know, I just feel like you could continue. It doesn't have to be an American. I just feel like there are so many ways to tell this story. Or, you know, I would like to see them tell the story. Or maybe you have like I don't know, you have somebody else from Europe come to America. Maybe they come to the Southwest and they become a werewolf. There's just a lot of different ways that you could kind of do a third one. And so I really kind of, you know, I don't need a remake of An American Werewolf in England. It's a great film. We all know how I feel about John Landis, who's a piece of shit, but it's a great film. I would prefer just a sequel that kind of tries to do something unconventional with the premise of An American, the fish out of water story, but adding the werewolf aspect into it. So American Werewolf in Paris, definitely give it a watch. I think this was on Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. So watch it today if you want. Am I going out of order? I might be going out of order here. Let me take a look. Oh boy, this next one. Jeez Louise. I don't even know how to talk about this next one. This is course, I know how to talk about it, but ugh, this is a mean movie. This was a mean movie, you guys. Here we go. Sorry. All right. This one was on Shudder, and it's called When Evil Lurks from 2023. This is directed by Damien Rugna. There's no point in praying. In a remote village, two brothers find a demon-infected man just about to give birth to evil itself. They decide to get rid of the man, but merely succeed in helping him to deliver the inferno. Well, that's kind of a spoiler, but whatever. Man, this played in theaters and I missed it. And it's one of, the thing about horror films is sometimes they catch a buzz, man. And when a horror film catches a buzz, because the thing is, horror fans love something that's new and fresh, right? Like they're always looking for the next new, fresh horror film. It's just like, it's something that we live and breathe for. It's a currency that we trade. Have you seen da 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 da? Have you heard about da 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 da? It's part of the discovery of something new, and really that extends to all moviedom, but particularly with genre films and particularly with horror films. Have you seen the latest this? And it becomes a quest. I have to go and I have to search it out. And When Evil Lurks was that film for 2023. Where everybody was talking about it, and Shudder put it out on as like a exclusive on streaming because it only had a limited release in theaters. And this is what I had to say about it. The hype is real, and this is the last thing I should have been watching with everything that's happening in the world. Yeah, it's a really tough watch. It's a challenging watch. And here's the thing. I don't have a problem with a challenging, tough watch. Like, for instance, we were talking earlier this month, we were talking about The Tower, and I was talking about how brutally dark and disturbing and bleak The Tower is. But as challenging as the material was, there was real artistic substance in what was being conveyed. So you can have something like Baby Eating and still have something that is like has like a deep artistic, message of symbolism and theme weaved throughout it. What was the ultimate point of The Tower? That life is meaningless and that everything is nothing, or we are, existing in nothing that will soon swallow us up. So is that like really a message that needs to be delivered to people? Is that a message of art that needs to be delivered? I don't know. Maybe it's more a message of artistic expression based on how one feels about the human condition. But in the case of When Evil Lurks, I mean, actually, now as I'm thinking about it, I was just about to say that there's nothing of the sort. But that's not true. That's not exactly true. So the world, there's a world with established rules, and it sort of like it feeds you these rules in a pretty sort of straightforward way. Like it lets you know that this is a world where demons, like there is a pandemic of demons that are sort of kept at bay. There are these people that know how to deal with these demons, and the demons basically infect people like a virus. And, if you do evil things, if you do evil to the evil, then you spread the evil further. What's up, Crazy White Boy? How you doing? Crazy White Boy out of Baltimore, everybody here in the house. We're talking horror movies. If you do evil to it, you will spread it further. So there's like I said, there's like 7 or 8 rules, and they all get explained to us. But I feel like the movie doesn't really do a great job of following its own rules, kind of like It Follows. It Follows sort of established rules, but then didn't really follow them that well. I'm not a big It Follows guy. They just announced the sequel to that, by the way, called They Follow. Whatever. Of course I'll go see it, but it's not some sacred cow to me. It's really not. When Evil Lurks it just sort of it didn't quite work for me. That what makes it that you gotta see sort of film for the Halloween season is just it's a mean movie, man. It does mean things to people. Spoilers, I don't care. I'm going to spoil this movie, so stop now if you haven't seen it yet. Spoilers: the little girl gets mauled to death by a dog. Yeah, it's gnarly. A mother eating her child's brains as she carries his body along the side of the road. I'm like, why am I watching this? Like, I'm like, so sad about the world right now and like what's happening in the world and all the just death. And I'm like sitting here watching this movie. It's like deeply affecting me, like just really weird. I don't know, man. Here's my problem. Here's my other problem with the movie. It ultimately, it establishes these rules. It establishes this world, but it really doesn't do anything more with the premise. It just sort of ends. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the movie ends before it can even really begin. Like there's this sort of loose sort of narrative about trying to stop the evil, and they kind of try and it doesn't really work, and the evil's released onto the world. I don't know, man. It didn't, I did not connect with it. The hype around the nasty aspects of it are indeed warranted, and I can appreciate why people want to watch it. It's well written. Don't get me wrong. The writing is great. The exposition is great. The way that the story is communicated, the story mechanics are communicated, great. But like I said, I needed a little more. I needed a little more in it to really work for me. Listen, Wolf. I do think that they did the demons proper. I thought the demons were done properly. I just didn't. It just didn't. It just what I don't know. It could have been more effective than it was. How about that? There's some really great makeup effects in this movie. I mean, just tremendous. Like the initial like infected guy who's like infected with this demon entity that's going to ruin the world is just so disgusting looking. You can smell the visuals. You know what I mean? And that's when you've done your job right, when you can smell what you're seeing in a movie. So check it out. Check it out. When Evil Lurks. It's streaming on Shudder. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5, which I think was pretty fair considering my feelings about it. Oh my God. Van motherfucking Helsing. Okay. Van Helsing from 2004, directed by Steven Sommers. The one name they all fear. Famed monster slayer Gabriel von Helsing is dispatched to Transylvania to assist the last of the Valerius bloodline in defeating Count Dracula. Anna Valerius reveals that Dracula has formed an unholy alliance with Dr. Frankenstein's monster and is hellbent on exacting a centuries-old curse on her family. That barely scratches the surface of the plot of this movie. And, Van Helsing is another one of those films. This was streaming on Tubi. I watched it with my son. It was the perfect movie to show my son. And I got to tell you, people have always taken a giant shit on Van Helsing, and I don't understand why. This movie did nothing wrong. Nothing. Okay? It really didn't. It didn't do nothing wrong back in 2004, and it didn't do anything wrong in 2023 when I rewatched this movie. It's 19 years old. Can you believe it? It swings hard and true. That's so true, man. It just takes such a hard swing. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it just puts all of its eggs in a basket and just swings forth and tries to make a deep impact. And I feel like it at the time, I feel like I'm trying to remember. It did pretty well at the box office. And people just thought it was not a good movie. And I just don't like, how could you not think this is a good movie? It's 2 hours and 12 minutes long. And it just shows how much of a beast Steven Sommers is, when it comes to filmmaking. Now, this is the guy. What else has Steven Sommers done? He did the Mummy movie. He did the Mummy. He did the Mummy Returns. He did Deep Rising, and he directed Van Helsing. What a friggin' body of work. All three of these movies could be in the same universe. You could totally imagine that the Mummy happens about 30-ish years after the events of Van Helsing. Like, it literally works on the same kind of timeline, same sort of world, same sort of magic and wonder and supernatural mystery, that sort of thing. It's amazing that Sommers was able to balance so many of the amazing things that he packed into the 2 hour and 12-minute run time. If this movie came out today, it would actually be 3 2-hour movies to make it a trilogy. The studios would be super greedy and be like, we want 3 2-hour movies. And the first one would be called, what would the first one be called? It would be Rise of Van Helsing, and then something for the second movie that would leave you on a cliffhanger. And the third movie would be Battle for Transylvania. Because every movie, the first one is always Rise. And then, the last one has to be Battle for. I guess that maybe that's like a Peter Jackson trope at this point. I just feel like, or, they did it for Planet of the Apes too. They just always do that. Rise of whatever, Rise of Gru. It's just so goofy to me. Or they add returns somewhere in some kind of way. But this movie came from a time before we had to, have franchises that were, continuous stories being told over multiple movies, the way that Marvel has really popularized that. And it just doesn't work for me, man. And really, it's also a Star Wars thing too, and Lord of the Rings, like those movies, and maybe Harry Potter. You want to count Harry Potter as well. These ideas, these stories that are just so big and rich and full of stuff, and we need to tell them over 3 different movies. And Sommer is like, I'm going to take all the stuff that's in Van Helsing easily could have been 3 movies. Like, you could have made 3 movies out of it. I don't know if you needed 3 2-hour movies, but you could have done it. You could have figured out a way to sort of pull it out like taffy, and it would have worked. I noticed my review here from 2020. I was a little bit more harsh. I said it's a super film. I wish we got more. I do. I wish I got more too. I said that the CGI is yucky, though. I wonder if it would play better in black and white. I would have to try that next time. And I didn't end up trying it next time. But next time I will try it in black and white. But you could see that my love for the movie grew. I mean, I never hated the movie. Not once. Not even when it came out. But Kate Beckinsale, she is, beautiful, gorgeous. This was when Kate Beckinsale, when she was at the height of her Kate Beckinsale powers, she came off of doing what the hell is it called, with the Romeo and Juliet vampire werewolf movie. I Am a Deaf Dealer. What the fuck is it? Underworld. She was in Underworld. She looks so good in that tight black latex thing that she wears in Underworld. And here she's like she's Romanian. She's everybody's got they kind of have the goofy Eastern European accent. That's kind of the equivalent. It's like the Dick Van Dyke, the Dick Van Dyke English accent. When I had Zombina and the Skeletons on my show, and I was doing my English accent for them, just trying to be goofy, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the Dick Van Dyke." Although they're from Liverpool, so they were speaking with a Liverpudlian twang. But there's like the Eastern, I know I can't even do it. I'm going to try and butcher it, and I can't even do it. But it's like everybody's doing that kind of accent. And then at the center, you have Hugh Jackman, who is like right knee deep in his Wolverine heyday, and just crushing it as like the action star. And he just plays the titular Van Helsing, who I don't know what you would call. He's like kind of like your stock action hero. There's really not a lot of substance to Van Helsing. He's kind of just like an avatar for the audience. he's like your typical stock action star, but and there's like a little bit of a steampunk vibe going on. There are like weird instruments and tech gadgets. There's like a little bit of like a James Bond thing going on. He works for the Vatican. The one thing I don't like about all of these films that deal with like the old Universal horror movies or deal in like the monster universe, it always goes back to like the Catholic or the Christian church being the ultimate good. No offense to my Christian and Catholic brothers and sisters and friends and people and whatnot, but it's just like, you know what I'm saying? It's like it just sort of, it makes like, it creates the spectrum of like the church is good, everything else is evil. I don't know. And I feel like that's always been sort of present in certain, like, for instance, like vampires are harmed by crosses. But here's a question. Are vampires harmed by, what about Jewish stars? Or like, a Muslim, whatever the fuck that thing, the half moon. Is it only why do only crucifixes work on vampires? So it's kind of like based in Christian, like it's like I don't know, Christian mythology or whatever you want to call it. And that's this movie is firmly rooted in that. The idea that like the Vatican wants to just sort of cleanse the world of monsters. You don't have to look very deep to like see the underlying theme there in that, especially when you consider that Dracula, Nosferatu, I did a whole episode about this. Need I say more? Dracula is, this is getting a little too dicey. I'm going to stop now. Dracula is great in this movie. God, what's the name of the actor? I got to look him up now. The actor's name, I think it's Richard Roxburgh. Is that him? Yeah, that's him. He is great, man. Wow, he's in a lot of movies. He's in Mission Impossible. Oh, he is in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. How about that? I was talking with my friend. We were saying that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Van Helsing would make a great kind of double feature. And there you have it. There you have it right there. He plays kind of like a death rock gothic, vampire Dracula, and he just does a great job. He just chews every scene he is in. He's awesome. Frankenstein, I almost wish Frankenstein's monster got his own movie. They really did a good job of just weaving everything together, every single thing together. Again, the only element that doesn't work is the sort of Vatican, like, whatever the fact that he's like the right hand of God, Van Helsing is, and that he was the one who murdered Dracula and he doesn't remember anything. Like that whole element was kind of the goofiest element of all. It just didn't work for me. I didn't connect with that. Just, I don't know. But Frankenstein's the best part about Frankenstein's monster in general is all these, monsters in general. The point of them is that we see the humanity inside of their monstrous exterior. So they look monstrous on the outside, but deep inside they are human, and they're not just human, they are more human than the humans themselves, who end up being monstrous. So the humans are the monsters, and the monsters have humanity on the inside. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And I think the Frankenstein's monster in this is one of the best examples, just one of the best characters. The Frankenstein's monster, he's such a hero in this movie. He's so great, so selfless, just wonderful, really, really, truly wonderful. And of course, werewolves get thrown in the mix. Van Helsing becomes a werewolf and gets some really goofy, emerging werewolf powers. I think werewolves were kind of a theme this year with the 31 days. And of course, there's this great theme that could have been expanded upon a little bit more, in that, again, the Vatican, they want to, the Vatican Church wants to, eliminate all monster kind. And here you have this conflict because Frankenstein's monster, he just wants to live, man. He's a good fucking guy. In fact, he reads the fucking Bible, man. He memorizes the Bible, you know? So in a way, it's kind of like he finds God, he finds Christianity, he has a lot of humanity, and yet the church wants him to die simply because he's an abomination. And it's like I feel like they could have. That's a theme I feel like it could have been pushed further. Whereas like I said, Van Helsing ends up is very bland. He's very sort of like just a bland action avatar for the audience. It would have been interesting to explore more where he has prejudices against monsters, and then when he discovers that like Frankenstein's monster is like one of the most like human, he has more humanity than some humans do, that he sort of changes his mind. Or it kind of happens with his werewolfdom. Van Helsing becomes a werewolf, right? He becomes a werewolf, and then suddenly there's like a race to cure him because he's the main guy. And it's kind of like, it would have been more interesting if he has this sidekick named Carl, who is also in the movie 300 and is also so great. I love Carl. I really, really, really love Carl. And he's just a great comedic sidekick foil. It would have been interesting if he became the werewolf and Van Helsing was suddenly confronted with, the pull of his duty to the Vatican Church, who need him to exact out, need him to follow and deal with this, like any other monster. And Van Helsing being sort of conflicted and like, hey, this is my friend. Like, this is not a monster. Maybe not all monsters are evil. That would have been interesting. And then the movie does something really ballsy that I hate. I hate it, but I respect it because it's ballsy. They kill off Kate Beckinsale. She dies at the end. She doesn't end up with Van Helsing. And, I hate that, but also at the same time, like, wow, that's so fucking ballsy. Just doing something different, man. Because any other movie that they would have to end up together. And it's like, no, we're going to go outside of the norm. So you get to have this full experience, it's kind of like in the same way as Flash Gordon, the Dino De Laurentiis film, where everything happens in that one movie. And when you reach the end of that movie, that is the end. And I mean, that's true. Could they have done more Van Helsing? Sure. Could we have gotten a Frankenstein spinoff? Absolutely. Would have loved that. But the ultimate reality is that everything is contained. You even get this great opening scene with Dr. Hyde. He has to he faces off against Mr. Hyde, who's like this monstrous oaf that eats people. Kind of reminds me of the Hulk from the Ultimate Marvel universe. Yeah. Fucking Van Helsing, dude. Just really, really great. Cold Open is great too. Like straight out of a Universal horror movie. You could watch this whole movie in black and white. And like I said, it would be more forgiving of the CGI elements if you decided to do so. This time I rated it 4 stars out of 5. Well-deserved. Van Helsing from 2004. Okay. Here we go. Wolf. From 1994, directed by Mike Nichols, who I had the pleasure of meeting when I was very young. It's weird. I met him right after he made this movie, and that was about 30 years ago, because Wolf is about to be 30 years old. That's so strange. I'm like thinking about that right now. And of course, Wolf. Here we go. Wolf from 1994. The 90s brought us solid takes on both Dracula and Frankenstein, but when it came to the Wolfman, things fell a bit flat as we were left with not much but a movie like Wolf. In fact, I would almost garner American Werewolf in Paris, although it's not a very serious movie. Wolf is a very sort of somber, serious film. And again, the 90s Renaissance gave us Bram Stoker's Dracula by way of Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, just one of the truly great remakes. Again, when we were talking about great remakes of movies, I would definitely put Dracula and the Frankenstein, directed by Kenneth Branagh, who people do not like that Frankenstein with Robert De Niro as Frankenstein. It's fantastic, man. I don't know where the hate comes from. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula. What a 1-2 punch double feature screening that is. And we never got that third movie. I guess you could count The Wolfman from 2010, the one that was directed by Joe Johnston, which is a great film, but it wasn't from the 90s. And so it doesn't have that 90s vibe the way both Dracula and Frankenstein do. Just really serious, straightforward, meticulous remakes from the source material. But Mike Nichols gave us the Wolfman in the form of Wolf. And, I haven't seen the Wolf. I haven't seen Wolf since the 90s. It's been a very, very long time. And, oddly enough, it doesn't feel like a true werewolf movie. Instead, it is more of a deconstructionist view of the werewolf film. I mean, Jack Nicholson is a werewolf. Don't get me wrong. And we see him sort of transform into a werewolf, but he doesn't really go full. It's not like a full werewolf transformation. You also have Michelle Pfeiffer there. And I was reminded that they both starred in The Witches of Eastwick, directed by George Miller in 1987, along with Susan Sarandon and Cher. And then they would both work with Tim Burton separately in Batman movies with Michael Keaton. And then they would team up right after that to star in Wolf. And she's like, she plays the love interest. And Jack Nicholson is like, this is a post-Joker Jack Nicholson. He's still, he's old. He's old, man. He's probably pushing 60 by this point. Maybe he's just in his early 60s now. And no, he couldn't be early 60s because then he'd be 90. He's not in his 90s yet. He's about 85. So he's probably late 50s when he made Wolf. And it's amazing. You look at Jack Nicholson then, and he still feels kind of old and a little fragile. Although this was a very physical role for Jack Nicholson, and he gives a great physical performance. In fact, I would say this role might be just as physical as his role in The Shining, or it's comparable for sure. I mean, you don't really think of Jack Nicholson as an action actor, and yet Wolf is probably the closest you're going to get to Jack Nicholson in some kind of action role. And the reason why I say it's a deconstructionist view of a werewolf, it like really breaks down the idea of the werewolf into its most basic primal elements. This idea of sort of rivalry and territory and sort of like passion, all of these kinds of elements. This is how we explore the theme of a werewolf in that kind of way. So it's not really so much about the mythology, although it is there. And make no mistake, he is undergoing some kind of werewolf-like transformation. Although I didn't realize this back in the day, but I think in this, it's implied that he literally is sort of devolving or evolving, whichever the way you'd want to say it, into an actual wolf. And the wolf that we see at the beginning of the movie, what started off as a human being that slowly devolved or whatever, just transformed into a wolf irreversibly, even, there's some really great, there's some great scenes in this movie, but the pace is slow. The pacing is slow. It's got a two hour plus runtime. And one of the weirdest elements of this film is that the tone and pacing make this film feel like it was made in the 70s and not the 90s. So it came out in the 90s, but it's just like, it's the camera work. It's like I said, it's the pacing and it's the tone that make it feel like it's a movie from the 70s. Go watch Wolf and tell me it's not a 70s movie that was shot in the 90s. Perhaps the most interesting aspects of Wolf have nothing to do with the actual movie and instead have everything to do with how much Jack looks like Wolverine in his wolf makeup. And perhaps that if he was 20 years younger when the first X-Men movie came out in 2000, like if he was 20 years younger, that he could have played the perfect Logan. I always felt like the shining Jack Nicholson is Logan from, Logan, Wolverine, Weapon X. And you see it on full display in Wolf. And it's just amazing how, like, I was like, whoa, why have I never, like, sort of realized that? If you've never seen it, it's definitely worth checking out. It's not that third Universal Monster remake movie that you want in the 90s, the way it might have felt. I always kind of put it there in that third place. It doesn't really work. You get, you also have James Spader in the movie, and he also becomes a werewolf. I forgot about that part. And he gets bitten by Jack Nicholson. They duel at the end. You get some pretty great werewolf action. Mike Nichols does a great job of sort of directing all that and putting that all together. And the movie doesn't, man, the ending is so, he just runs off. It doesn't work. The ending really doesn't work. That's Wolf from 1994. Oh boy. All right, we're coming up on the final 4 here. That's right. This was a lot. I watched a lot of movies. And, part of my problem was I stopped writing my little blurbs. Now I'm going to be really freeballing it for the remainder of these movies. We got 5 movies left. I'm going to be freeballing it for the rest of these because I just did not I just got tired of writing stuff. Okay, we have Evil Tunes from 1992, directed by Fred Olen Ray. I think this was put out by Empire or Full Moon. It stars Dick Miller, David Carradine are both in this film, as well as the director himself. Evil Tunes. First they undress you, then they possess you. 4 sexy young girls are to clean an old house for the new owners. They get delivered an old book full of magic incantations, and while reading it, they accidentally bring a cartoon character to life. The cartoon character likes the blood of young girls. I don't know how else to say this, but Evil Tunes features a cartoon wolf that basically essays that RAPES's the main character girl and possesses her. Yes, that actually happens in this movie. The movie was made for $125,000 and it was shot in 8 days, and it's it's an impressive movie, like in that sense, like not the subject matter, but just that the fact that the filmmaker was able to make this in 8 days in the 1991. All right, think about this. 1991 for $125,000 with both Dick Miller and David Carradine in it, who at that time were pretty, they were, small character actor, B-roll sort of, actors. But he was able to, get some names in the movie and do all of this at that time. I mean, that's like nothing. It's really, really impressive. The movie is just absolutely ridiculous. Four girls, talk about gratuitous nudity. I mean, there are just scenes that are just, there's nothing more than just, hey, we're just going to take off our shirt. And mind you, probably 15-year-old me would have loved Evil Tunes just because, my 2 prerequisites back in the day were, what is the gore situation and is there nudity? And I think we all cared about that. But, today that's not really that important. You kind of get a David Carradine. You could tell he worked one day on this movie. He was there for one day. And it's just a bunch of scenes of him lurking by a tree. That's it. It's just David Carradine lurking by a tree. He unalives himself at the beginning. And we get this weird out of place explanation around the book, which features this cartoon that's supposed to be an ancient book. And yet at the same time, it's just a ripoff of the Necronomicon. It's a talking book. It's funny because this was a talking book. And right around this time, Army of Darkness came out and had a very similar kind of vibe to their Necronomicon. Although they don't call it the Necronomicon in this one. And all the girls were porn stars, and that's why they were hired, because they would have no problem with taking off their clothes. Dick Miller's in it a bunch. Dick Miller's fun. You know, I love Dick Miller. Anybody who knows Dick Miller is in everything. He's in every Roger Corman movies. You know, probably the big one is Bucket of Blood from 59, which he's watching in this movie. He's watching himself in Bucket of Blood and wondering why this actor never got an Oscar. So I thought that was kind of funny. Again, the fact that they had animation, they were doing like Roger Rabbit styled cartoon animation in a movie that cost $125,000. That's what makes it impressive. But of course, you know, instead of doing something interesting, what are they going to do? What do they have time to do? They end up, you know, creating assault, if you know what I mean, that kind of assault in this movie. And yeah, I don't know. There's really not much to say about it. I mean, it's really goofy. The girls do a lot of sort of, it almost feels like the girls are emulating the Three Stooges in a haunted house style setting. All Empire and Full Moon films, you know, they always take place in one location with some element that involves either puppets or animation of some kind, because, you know, then you don't have to pay actors, and, you know, you fill out your 80-minute movie. Boom, you got an 80-minute movie. Good to go. And I think Evil Tunes kind of fits in with that. And like I said, the monologue by David Carradine at the end, like his explanation, like we don't even need this explanation. Like after everything is said and done and the evil is vanquished, like there's literally no reason to explain what just happened. And yet David Carradine goes on this long ass tirade as to what happened, why things happened, and how he was like very naughty guy. He was a naughty guy who was into a lot of mischief. I don't know. So goofy. So goofy. Evil Tunes. I gave it 2 stars out of 5. It's streaming on Freevee on Amazon Prime. So check it out if you're down, if you're interested, if that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to roll. Let's go back to the diary. Almost there. Okay. So this was the year of Shudder for me. Like every year kind of has a theme. Sometimes we do Universal Horror, sometimes we do Hammer, sometimes we do anthologies. This year was all about just watching Shudder. Maybe it's because I neglected my Shudder account, my Shudder subscription. I wanted to just make good use of it, and I most certainly did this year. And I tried to, you know, we didn't watch too many older films, too many black and white films, but I tried to expand my horizons with some international fare. Watch some French films, watch some Japanese films. And in this case, I watched a Kazakhstan film called Sweetie, You Won't Believe It from 2020, directed by Yerner Nalgaliev. And you won't believe this. Dastan can no longer stand the constant nagging of his highly pregnant wife and decides to run away for at least one day with his friends. Men go fishing, which would have gone smoothly if not for a series of unforeseen events. And I love movies. We talked about all the different premises. What are they doing with the bodies in the morgue? What kind of meat are they eating? You know, is the trope of are they or is it the thing or not the thing that we suspect it of being? That's a premise, that sort of thing. And now we're confronted with the premise of a series of unforeseen events unfolding, which I absolutely love. And, you know, a series of unforeseen events is not necessarily a horror premise. It's something that you see in a lot of sort of indie movies. You see it, like, I think of like a movie like Pulp Fiction or Go or whatever. Some movie where, you know, again, you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it loops you into this whole ordeal. And that's basically what happens in Sweetie, You Won't Believe It. The comedy is it's you know, it's Kazakhstanian culture. You know, I got some of the humor, but some of it just didn't land for me particularly. And I think maybe it was my American palate. I didn't connect with it. This movie is very gory, like very violent and gory. You have these gangsters who are, you know, after our guys who just want to go out fishing because they witnessed murder. And it just goes on from there. It's absolutely worth checking out, especially, you know, the beautiful thing, again, one of the beautiful things that I love about watching movies from other places is that you do get to see ways of life that are, so similar and yet so different from your own. In the case in point, Kazakhstan. I mean, you just don't think of, the only time you think of Kazakhstan, you think of Borat, and Kazakhstan is so much more to that. Case in point, in this movie, you get to like sort of really see, like, at least at the beginning, before all the crazy ridiculous elements, you see him in like a pharmacy waiting in line. It's like, oh, that's a Kazakhstanian pharmacy. You don't think about that. You don't think that that's what happens on the other side of the world, but it does. My friend Josh, his wife Alina, she is Kazakhstanian, actually, funny enough, and they've been to Kazakhstan. I wonder if she's seen Sweetie, You Won't Believe It. Definitely check it out for sure. It's not necessarily like, I would say it's horror adjacent. It wasn't a Halloween movie for sure. And, yeah, it's just a big ordeal. And like I said, some of the bickering housewife elements, which maybe it's more of like a Kazakhstani humor thing. It just didn't really, I don't know, it didn't really land for me. But not to say that it wasn't good, and not to say that there were plenty. I mean, there was so much. I think you had this crazy guy who had like one of those like weird, like frosted eyes, like his eye was grayed over, blurred out, or whatever you want to call it. And he's going around killing people too. It was a crazy mixed up movie. Lots of gory stuff. You got a fishing line. he gets a fishing hook caught in his ear, and it rips his earlobe off. I would say, in fact, the comedy that lands the hardest is the slapstick humor that comes from the ultra violence that's present in the film. So, Sweetie, You Won't Believe It, from 2020. 3 out of 5 stars, now streaming on Shudder. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. All right, 3 more to go. Let's do it. We're getting there. Okay, this was an interesting film. Super interesting. This is called Yokai Monsters, 100 Monsters. It's just called 100 Monsters. This was on Shudder. It's from 1968. It's directed by Kimiyoshi Yasuda. A fantastic world unlike anything you have ever seen. A greedy developer in league with a corrupt shrine magistrate brutally tries to drive people out of a tenement building and destroy the shrine in the back. But he makes the fatal mistake of hosting a 100 ghost stories ceremony without the closing cleansing ritual, opening the door for the yokai monsters to punish the wicked. And that's actually a pretty concise description of what happens. That, yeah, there's like a lot. There's like a lot. I don't know what the time period of this is. There are 2 types of movies that were made in Japan, especially, at least around this time. Obviously that would change. That has changed in the decades since, but like in the 60s and 50s and earlier than that, you had salaryman pictures that typically that were contemporary films, and then you had historical films, and in some cases you had historical genre films. And case in point would be 100 Monsters, which also kind of reminded me a lot of VIY, which is a Russian film. It's kind of like, it's funny. This is Japanese Roger Corman. That's what this is. Like Roger Corman doing his Poe cycle of Edgar Allan Poe films, but in Japan with Japanese folklore. That's what you get when you watch this. And the monsters, as you can see in the background here on the banner, the monsters are so weird looking, so creative. The techniques, some of the film techniques are really interesting from 1968. You don't have CGI, and the special effects were just so different, using black paint, using a lot of shadow to sort of manipulate what is being seen. Yes, you have weird umbrella monsters, weird characters. And yeah, so it's kind of cool. They only show us 1 out of the 100 ghost stories. I feel like we could have seen a few more ghost stories that would have been interesting, maybe to introduce a few more of the monsters. And at the end, if you don't do a cleansing ritual, the spirits are able to come through, and that's basically what happens. And eventually they do end up saving the tenement building, which was going to be turned into a brothel. And then you have some weird, there's some samurai sword fighting type stuff that happens a little bit later on. So you don't really see people battling the monsters. The monsters just kind of come in and they haunt. There's some weird animation with the umbrella monster before he actually shows up. And then we get this really beautiful, ethereal, ghost-like sequence at the end of the movie that shows all the monsters like dancing in a parade before disappearing into their own like shadow realm. It's really great. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This was part of a trilogy of movies from 68 to 69. There are 2 other ones that I haven't seen, but absolutely will be watching. I don't know if I'll wait till next year. I might watch them sooner because I just really enjoyed watching them, and I don't want them to be taken off Shudder before I get a chance to see them. So I highly, highly recommend this one. If you have Shudder, check it out. 100 Monsters. You will have a lot of fun. Guys, we got Tabletop Bob is in the comments right here. Tabletop Bob, check out his channel. If you guys like Dungeons and Dragons and role play and things like that, Bob is always doing that stuff on his channel, and he is an avid YouTuber like myself. All right, we're on to, oh boy. Okay, so the 2 movies that I watch on Halloween. So for my Halloween watch, I always try to watch something that's really sort of a special, something that is premium. You know, nothing that's filler, nothing that's, you know, something that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy watching, because sometimes it can feel like a chore, right? Sometimes your horror watches, and that should never be the case. You should always watch stuff and enjoy watching it when you do. Like it shouldn't feel like a chore. It should feel like pure enjoyment. But sometimes these movies can feel like a chore. But on Halloween, I always make sure I got to pick out something that is just going to be a really fun, guaranteed fun watch. Because sometimes when you're watching something you've never seen before, you don't know what you're getting into. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what am I getting into? Case in point, we got The Blob. Now, we talked about horror remakes when we were talking about The Thing from Another World. And I'm going to reiterate that here because I know that eventually this is going to be its own review. The Blob, for me, is on the Mount Rushmore of all remakes, and particularly horror remakes, just the gold standard. You know, during this revisit of The Blob, I was just so blown away by the script, the story writing, the screenwriting in this retelling. It's written by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. You may know Frank Darabont. He did and would become a director in his own right. He did Shawshank Redemption, which everybody loves. He also brought us The Walking Dead. He adapted The Walking Dead from the comic to AMC, you know. He also delivered us The Mist, one of the most brutal adaptations of any of Stephen King's work, especially that ending, really ballsy ending I don't think I've watched. Oh yeah, I've definitely watched it since becoming a dad, but that's a tough watch when you're a dad. The Blob remake is an example of a perfect screenplay. Perfect. If you want to like personify what should be taught in a screenwriting class, look no further than the Blob remake. So the original Blob is pretty sort of straightforward, right? You know, it lays a foundation for Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. And remember, as I said, Chuck Russell is also the guy that directed The Mask a few years later. So it's kind of weird to think that, but it makes sense. When you think about it, it makes sense that the guy who directed The Mask would be making a movie like The Blob. They kind of overlap in that kind of way. Yes, I think The Blob it's just one of the great horror classics. And yes, The Mist, oof. Thomas Jane is great. Thomas Jane is great. So what does it say? Sorry. I have a big pothole in my brain right now. Remake of the 1958 sci-fi horror film about a deadly blob, which is the spawn of a secret government germ warfare project, which consumes everyone in its path Teenagers try in vain to warn the townsfolk, who refuse to take them seriously, while the government agents try to cover up the evidence and confine the creature. Now, everything I just said is not in the original at all. All of that stuff was added. The only thing that's in the original film is there's this unexplained, alien blob that eats people, and there are some teenagers that are trying to save the town from being eaten. And of course, the blob overtakes a movie theater, and that's really where the similarities end with the original blob. Everything else that is mentioned in that synopsis is built on top of that foundation. And it's done in this very kind of Stephen Kingish way. And you could tell, again, Frank Darabont, he is a disciple of Stephen King. And when I mentioned before that, the screenwriting is pitch perfect. It's like, if Stephen King is a master of screenwriting, Frank Darabont is the student who has surpassed the master, along with Chuck Russell, of course. They wrote it together. They surpassed the master in this regard with the blob. You have the town itself feels like its own character. And that's so essential when doing like a movie that's like kind of like an ensemble like this is. It's not necessarily that all the characters, you have Shawnee Smith, you have a bunch of, in fact, you have the guy who he's in RoboCop. He plays one of the thugs that gets melted by the toxic waste at the end. You have a bunch of Darabont regulars. You have the guy who played Dale, Jeffrey, what's his name? Jeffrey DeMunn. And of course, you have a very young Kevin Dillon. And the movie has balls, man. The movie has such balls. It's friggin', it's so subversive in what it does. It makes us think that the football jock is going to be the hero, the main star. He's the Steve McQueen type character. And what do they do to him? They friggin' kill him off in the first act, man. And it's so gnarly. It's so brutal. His death is so disturbing and scary and shocking. It's something that you're not expecting at all. And then suddenly it's like you go, wait a minute. Kevin Dillon is actually going to be the hero. And it's just, man, it's great. It's just so great. Every character, there's so much care is put into the characters. Every character has some little kind of arc or completes some little kind of loop, there are all these things that are set up and paid off. The town is a snow town, and they have snowmakers, and it's not working, and it hasn't snowed in a long time. And that's gonna, be the thing that ends up saving the town at the end. So many people are established just so that they could be eaten by the blob. The blob is ruthless, man. Digesting everybody alive. Kids get eaten. I mean, it's really harrowing. You see this little boy get, sucked into sewer water and digested alive by the blob. You see someone fall in the street and a blob tentacle just comes down. I mean, I just literally could talk about this movie forever. The Blob is a perfect movie. It really, really is from start to finish. And again, they add the element of, trying to explain what the Blob is. And the Blob is a germ warfare project that is out of control. Kind of interesting too, that, you have a preacher. He takes it to be a sign of the end days. And he puts some blob in a jar. And of course, we're left with that little epilogue that shows that someday when he decides that it's the end times, he is going to unleash the blob again upon the world. And we never got the follow-up. I would love to see the apocalyptic Armageddon that the blob would bring to the world. Just so many great scenes. I really, the whole setup with the condom, there's that whole condom scene. There's just, it's like the perfect setup for a joke that just gets paid off so well. It's God, my words fail to, fully describe how great this movie is, The Blob. I have the Scream Factory. When the Scream Factory version came out, I got that beautiful blob poster. You can't really see it back there. And I just had it waiting in the whatever, in the shrink wrap, waiting for the day. I was like, it was like taking out a bottle of wine. Now is the time to watch The Blob, and that's exactly what I did. Yeah, just excellent. The special effects, and that's the other thing too. The special effects hold up so well when you realize that all the Blob is just like silk sheets with like this stuff called methylene, or it's like some methicil. It's called methicil. Actually, it's the same thing that you have in like McDonald's milkshakes, and that's what makes it look all shiny and slimy and gross. When you realize it's just silk and methicil, it's amazing. The creativity. That's all Tony Gardner, who got his start on Return of the Living Dead, doing the Half Corpse and the Split Dogs. And now, I mean, Tony Gardner, who had the pleasure, the honor of meeting fucking Tony Gardner. So funny too. I've told the story before. I was at the Sleepy Hollow International Film Festival, and I recognized Tony Gardner, and he was shocked that I knew who he was. He was shocked that anybody would like point him out, because, there were other people who were far more famous that were there, but I saw him and I was like, dude, fucking Tony Gardner. I got my picture taken with him, met his daughter. Really fucking nice guy. And just like, talk about a dude. That's the dude. I mean, he's done so many movies too. But The Blob stands out as being one of the best that he's done. I mean, just his work on that movie just holds up. That's from 1988. That movie is nearly 40 years old. It's pushing 40. And it looks spectacular, man. Spectacular. And again, the other thing that's interesting about The Blob is so many people get eaten. They don't deserve it. Some people deserve it. Some people like I'm thinking about The Waitress. They're just some people that get consumed, and you're just kind of like, man, they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve to go that way. And yet they do. Not so much for others. So that's The Blob. If you've never seen The Blob, you must like click out of this video and go watch The Blob immediately. It is essential. It is essential viewing. All right. Final film, our final movie for this year's 2023's 31 Days of Halloween. We have The Boneyard from 1991, directed by James Cummins. Dare to enter, try to leave. Children turned into zombies wreak havoc in a coroner's building with just a burnt-out psychic, an experienced cop, and two coroners to stop the madness. I don't even know how to begin to talk about this movie. It was first put on my radar by Rebecca McKendry, Dr. Rebecca McKendry, back on the podcast Shockwaves, one of my favorite fucking podcasts, RIP. Used to have back in the day. I mean, it feels like back in the day now. You have the great Elric Kane, along with co-hosts Ryan Turek and Rob G. And they would always go around in a cipher talking about movies that they had watched and seen. And that's how I was finding out about like the stuff, all sorts of stuff. And The Boneyard was something that was put on my radar, and I hadn't seen it. I think it was put out a while ago. It was put out by like either Scorpion Releasing or Red. What the hell's the name of it? Red Code, Red something. Red, the two brothers that put out movies. And now it's gotten a lot more of a wide release. I think it's been put out several times now on Blu-ray, and you always see it associated with that killer poodle mutant creature. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, there's like a weird psychic lady and a cop, and they go to a coroner's office, and there's a guy who died, and his like bloodline was responsible for taking care of children zombies who have to be kept fed so that they don't go crazy. These zombies are horrific looking. I mean, absolutely just disgusting, horrid little things. Like really the special effects are fantastic. And then of course, yes, there is a poodle monster, a giant mutant poodle monster during the end. Like I said, I was watching this at like late last night, and like I don't even know what to say. I'm so speechless. It it's hard to verbalize what I saw in that movie. I really don't know what else to say. Definitely worth a viewing. Definitely worth a viewing. It very grim sort of subject matter that's not treated. You have that the bumbling assistant cop to the main cop, and yeah, they go in there with the psychic, and it's kind of, it's kind of refreshing to see an older middle-aged woman sort of in a central kind of action-based role, as a protagonist character. You don't typically see that, but it's present here in the Boneyard. Just one of those weird little, it's amazing how the Boneyard's from 1991, and yet I didn't even hear about it until maybe 2019. You know what I mean? There's still movies out there to be discovered, and that's really nice when they are. I think that's it. What did I rate it? Let's see what I rated it. Oh my God. Don't tell me I have to sign in. Yeah, I got to sign in. Hold on one second. I gave The Boneyard 2 out of 5 stars. So check it out if you want. That brings us to the end of our show. I hope you enjoyed this year's 31 Days of Halloween. Thank you for joining me. We've got a lot of content coming, a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening here on the channel. One thing I will tell you that I have been working on, I might have mentioned it previously, but I've made a movie. I've made a lot of movies, and this is not the movie that I had just made. I made another movie. I made a documentary about it's autobiographical, and it really sort of documents the last 3 years of my life. And it's a very personal film, and it's about me making movies. And I think the title tentatively is Kuyashi, Japanese word, Kuyashi, Blood Visions and Chaos Magic. That's what it's called. That's the name of the movie. It's very long. It's about 2.5 hours. I'm trying to get it down. And I don't know how it's going to be distributed yet, but I've been working on it since the beginning of the summer. And it's a very personal film. And if you are an artist, if you create art in any kind of way, I think you'll really appreciate it. And I just want to let you know that's what I've been working on as of real recent. And I can't wait to show it to all of you. Amy, it has been a good Halloween watch season. I want to say that it's been a great Halloween, but it's been a bummer. It's been a rough month. It's not been an easy month, but definitely got to watch some great flicks this year, and we'll watch some more next year. That's what we do here on the Frumess channel. Yeah, that's all I got for you tonight. It's late. Peace, hair grease. Thank you, everybody. We will see you very, very soon. In fact, see you very, very soon, because we got to talk about the Beatles. That's another story for another day.